For the past couple of years, he had been making a nice little cozy home for himself in cell block D at a correctional facility in Oklahoma. Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, so we just jumping straight into today's video, and if you've been here for the last couple of weeks, then you know that we are going all across America in alphabetical order, so from Alabama to Wyoming, and today we are in Connecticut. And let me just say, this is going by a little bit faster than I anticipated. I didn't think that I would be in Connecticut already. I felt like I just started, but that's where we at. We in Connecticut. We almost to the D's. We rolling. Shout out to my consistency. Okay, so it's 2001 and we are in Milford, Connecticut with married couple Kelsey and Matthew Monahon. And the couple have been married for 2 years at this point. And they are in marital bliss right now. They are living their dream lives. And I don't know about y'all, but I feel like every married couple has their dream home in mind. One of their goals within their marriage is to build this dream house together, whether that's building it or buying it, right? And that's exactly what Kelsey and Matt were doing. They were renting a house near the beach and they were able to acquire some property right across the street, and that's where they started to build their dream home. So like I said, living the marital dream. And their current residence and the residence that they were building was located on Bittersweet Avenue. It's kind of insignificant, but I just thought I would mention it. But before we get to the bitter part of this story, let's continue with the sweet. So I told you they was already living a marital dream. They still in their honeymoon phase, and they building their new house right across the street from where they already live. And to top everything off, Kelsey just found out that she was pregnant. And she told Matt, and of course Matt was over the moon. Matt was ecstatic. Life just could not be better for these two at the moment. However, Memorial Day weekend would change everything and bring us to the bitter side of this story. So it's May 25th, 2001, and Matt and Kelsey at home chilling. Now, I didn't mention it, but Kelsey is just about 1 month pregnant. So she's in her first trimester. So she's hella tired, drowsy, just can't stay up for nothing. So yeah, they at the house chilling, and Matt gets a phone call from his brother. And his brother needs his help with moving something in his house. I don't remember what it was, but his brother needed some help over at his house. Now his brother didn't live too far away, so Matt didn't see a problem with just picking up and going to go help his brother. And he told Kelsey, look, I'll be right back. Well, maybe not right back, but listen, Kelsey, I'll be back, right? And Kelsey, she decided to stay at home because she's not about to help with the moving of anything at this point, and the girl is tired. So Matt leaves Kelsey at home and he goes out to help his brother. And Matt was only gone for about 45 minutes to an hour before he returned home. But when he did, he found Kelsey hogtied and unconscious. So he immediately sprung into action. He cut the rope from her so that she could be free of this hogtie, and he started CPR. And on top of being hogtied and unconscious, Kelsey had also been badly beaten. So like I said, Matt untied her and he started CPR, and he also called the police to let them know, like, hey, my wife, something happened to her while I was gone. Y'all need to get here. I need an ambulance right now. Because even though Kelsey was unconscious, she was still breathing. So the paramedics and the police arrive, where they do find an unconscious Kelsey who is still alive, and she's rushed to Bridgeport Hospital, where they perform life-saving measures on her. And they are able to get her on monitors where it helped her heartbeat and it helped her to breathe, but Kelsey remained unconscious. And unfortunately, she did end up passing away 3 days later. However, prior to her passing away, the investigation into her attack began. And right away, the investigators noticed that there was no forced entry into the home and that there was a safe that was open. And so this appeared to be some type of burglary where Kelsey potentially knew her attacker. So naturally, they're going to interview Matt because he is the closest person to Kelsey at this point. Because her mama I don't know where her daddy was, but her mama didn't live in Connecticut with her. She lived in New Jersey, where Kelsey was born at. I think she lived in New Jersey or Florida. I don't know. I know that Kelsey was born in New Jersey and her mama didn't live in Connecticut. That's all I know. So let me stop lying about where her mama lived at. I just know that it wasn't Connecticut. Anyways, they're interviewing Matt, and he tells them that the safe had initially contained $1,000, but detectives didn't see no $1,000 in there, so obviously it was taken during the course of Kelsey's attack. But robbery aside, Matt said that he didn't know nobody who would want to hurt Kelsey, and he didn't know anybody that the couple knew collectively that would rob them. Basically, Matt said he don't know what happened, he don't know why this happened, he don't know who could have done this, and he is just as baffled as the police are. So while this interview is going on with Matt, there's detectives at the house processing the crime scene. And during the processing of this crime scene, initially they don't really have too much besides the rope that Kelsey was tied up with. But eventually they end up finding some type of like a small trunk, or yeah, I'm gonna call it a trunk. Some type of small trunk that had just little knickknacks and just little stuff in it. But at the bottom of that trunk, they found a book about tying knots. And so this put in the detectives' minds that, this book of knots, of intricate knots, was found at the couple's home at the bottom of a trunk. Maybe Matt has something to do with this. And so they go back to Matt and like, hey, look what we found. There's this little bookie book here of intricate knots. Have you been indulging in the art of reading lately? And Matt was like, absolutely not. Matt says that the book that they had just found was a book that Kelsey had gotten from family members a long time ago, along with all the other stuff that was in the trunk. Kelsey had obtained that from family members a long time ago, and it was just in the trunk, and neither one of them had touched that book ever. But at this point, they side-eyeing him real hard, like, sure, that's awfully convenient. But Matt had an alibi, because remember, his brother had called him to go to his house. So he's like, listen, I was at my brother's house when this whole thing happened. So the detectives are like, okay, well, let's call to confirm. So they call Matt's brother, and his brother confirms that he did indeed call Matt that evening, and Matt was in fact at his house helping him move something at the time of the murder. But the police are like, well, I mean, yes, your alibi is corroborated by your brother, but at the same time, that's your brother. So is it true or is it not true? Spoiler alert, it wasn't Matt. But as the interview goes on, Matt does end up telling the detectives that there was a strange man who came to the house 2 days prior to Kelsey being attacked. And basically what he said was that somebody came and knocked on the door, and initially he thought it was one of the painters, because I told you they built in a house across the street and Kelsey was trying to get everything in order. So he thought that it was one of the painters. He opened the door like, hey, you one of the painters? And the person at the door is like, nah, bruh, I'm not a painter. My name is Anthony. Are you Matt? And Matt was like, yeah. And so the person at the door, Anthony, was like, do you know somebody named Amber? Now, we just calling this person Amber. That's not her name. And Matt was like, yeah. Why? And Anthony basically was like, well, do you owe her money? And Matt was like, listen, I don't owe her no money, but if she feels like I owe her money, she can contact me and me and her can get this situation worked out. You, the middleman, I'm not dealing with. And with that, Anthony left the residence. And when Anthony left, he left Matt with this uneasy feeling. And Matt ended up going to tell Kelsey what had just happened at the front door. And Kelsey was just like, well, yeah, that is kind of strange. And if you feel some type of way about it, you should just make a police report just so that you have a record of this strange man coming to our house. And so Matt was like, okay, bet. And he did go down and he made a police report. Now, like I said, the police already at this point think that maybe Matt has something to do with it. So they are a little skeptical about his story and think that it's awfully convenient that there's just some random man who we could potentially blame this crime on, who came to your door 2 days before your wife was attacked. But despite the way they feel about Matt, the detectives follow this lead anyways. And they go to Amber's house to see if maybe she did send somebody to Matt's house. So detectives are now talking to Amber and they ask her, do she know Matt? To which she says, yes, she does. And they ask her, do he owe her money? To which she also says yes. Now this is a direct contradiction to what Matt told them, because he said he don't owe her no money, but she say he do owe her some money. So there's a little bit of confliction there. But being that Amber feels like Matt owes her money, the detectives go on to ask, did she send somebody to Matt's house to collect her funds? And Amber says that she indeed did not send anybody to Matt's house to collect her funds on her behalf, because she would just collect her funds on her own behalf. And with that information in tow, they leave Amber's house. But on the way out, they notice a black car with out-of-town license plates. And the officer decided to just take down the license plates just because it was an out-of-town license plate. Just pretty much for no other reason than it stood out. So he basically jots down this license plate number just in case. So now that the interview with Amber is over, detectives are now interviewing Kelsey and Matt's neighbors. And at first, they really wasn't coming up with nothing. But then a couple of neighbors was like, yeah, we seen this black car with some Missouri license plates on it just chilling outside of Matt and Kelsey's house. And that was a little bit weird. But, you know, we thought maybe they had somebody coming in from out of town for Memorial Day weekend. So they didn't think nothing of it. But when detectives hear this, they take note, because the black car that the officer seen outside of Amber's house also had Missouri license plates on it. And so they was like, well, maybe that's the same person. So they run the license plate number and it comes back to a person named Luis Antonio Rodriguez. And Luis got a pretty little rap sheet on him. And so detectives go back to Amber's house and they like, girl, do you know somebody named Luis Rodriguez? And she was like, yeah, he was down here with me for Memorial Day weekend, but he gone now. What about it? So it's looking like to detectives that Luis was the one who came knocking on Kelsey and Matt's door that day, introducing himself as Anthony. And so detectives head up to Missouri to talk to Luis. Now, mind you, by this time, Kelsey had passed away. So they're no longer just investigating and attacking a robbery. They're investigating a murder. So they asked Luis a couple of questions. And Luis confirms that he was in Connecticut for Memorial Day weekend. But he was just hanging out with his homegirl, Amber. And Luis confirms that his middle name is Antonio, but sometimes he does go by Anthony. So that little bit of information lets the detectives know that he probably, more than likely, is the person who asked Matt, do he owe Amber some money. So they asked Luis, is he willing to give a DNA sample, because they wanted to test it against some DNA that was found from a small drop of blood that was on the rope that Kelsey was tied up with. And Luis agrees he has no problem giving over his DNA. So they test it against this blood sample, and unfortunately for them, the DNA is not a match. And because it wasn't a match, Luis was free to just go on about his life. So now the detectives are more determined than ever to find out who this blood droplet belonged to, because it did not belong to Kelsey. So it had to belong to her murderer. And so they are going through everything and they cannot figure out who this could potentially belong to. But because there were other people handling the rope and just throughout the whole process of collecting evidence and everything, they test everybody who was on the scene as well. And it turns out that the detective who bagged the rope as evidence had a small cut on his finger that was covered by a band-aid. However, there was a small droplet of blood that was able to seep through the band-aid and get on the rope during evidence processing. So the DNA matched one of the detectives. And so now they are back at square one and the case ends up going cold. But even though the case was cold, over the next 10 years, detectives quietly work on it every now and again. They bring it back out and try to just go over everything that they have to try to see if they missed something. But just in case they weren't working on it or had forgotten about Kelsey's case, Kelsey's mom would go to Connecticut every summer and go to the police department, and she would just give like a little gentle reminder that her baby's case was still unsolved, and that, you know, maybe they could just look at it again and potentially solve the case. So January 2010 rolls around now, and a young lady gets in contact with the police department, and she says that she has information about a murder that happened in 2001. And she said that at the time of this murder, she was in high school hanging out with her friends, and her group of friends had met a man named Anthony. Now, she didn't know Anthony on a personal level. This was just like a one-time meeting type of thing. And she said that during this meeting, Anthony told her and her friends about how he had strangled a woman, and that this woman ended up passing away. And she said that she wholeheartedly believed everything that he said, but she didn't come forward because, one, she was a child and she was scared, and two, because Anthony was supposedly gang affiliated, and she again was afraid for her own life. And so she didn't come forward until now because she felt like she just needed to get this off of her chest. So they show her a photo of Luis Antonio Rodriguez, and she identifies him as Anthony. And so with this information, they go and talk to her friends, and her friends corroborate her story about Anthony telling them that he killed a woman. And so now they know that Anthony was the killer the whole time, and they just didn't have enough evidence to prove it. But now with these young ladies' statements, they feel like they kind of got a little something going on. And so they go on a mission to find Anthony, which wasn't hard at all, because for the past couple of years he had been making a nice little cozy home for himself in cell block D at a correctional facility in Oklahoma, because he had been arrested for weapons charges. I told you the man had a rap sheet. Nothing changed. So they go to greet him at this Oklahoma correctional facility, but Luis don't want to talk to them. He ain't got nothing to say. However, even without his statement, they have enough to charge him with 2 counts of murder. And so that's exactly what they do. They charge the man with 2 counts of first-degree murder. But Luis don't want to go to trial, so he and his lawyers go to the prosecution with a deal. And they say that he'll confess, and he will tell them everything that happened as long as he can plead guilty to manslaughter, because he didn't mean to do it. And the prosecution and his defense team come to that agreement. And so in 2011, he pleads guilty to manslaughter, and he basically said that his romantic friend Amber told him that Matt owed her money, so he took it upon himself to pretty much go and get Amber's money for her. He said that when Kelsey opened the door, he attacked her, he tied her up, and he forced her to give him the combination to the safe, and he stole the $1,000 that was in the safe, but he never intended for her to die. He just tied her up just to keep her restrained while he was there. And he was just hoping that she would be found tied up and alive, right? But the type of knot that he used was the type of knot that got tighter every time Kelsey moved. And he would have had to know that, because whoever made the knot would know that it don't get looser. It gets tighter every time anybody moves. So he say he didn't mean to do it, and he just wanted her to be found alive, but like, what else did you expect with the type of knot that you used to tie her up? But nonetheless, that's what he said, and he was ultimately sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murders of Kelsey and her unborn child. However, this sentence isn't to start until after his sentence for the weapons charges is over, and that sentence is not over until 2025. So instead of being released in 2025 for the weapons charges, he will promptly be shipped from the Oklahoma correctional facility to a correctional facility in Connecticut, where he will serve the next 20 years. And if he lives through the 20 years, he will be well into his 70s before he is released. But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for today's video. Thank you all so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one when we are in Delaware. They live in and they acquired some property right across the. Okay, girl, you gonna have a time editing, honey, because you play so much. Okay, and he wasn't gone that long. Okay. And on top of being unconscious, and they are able to get her a heartbeat, and and they are able to get her heartbeat again. No. Her mama didn't live in, where we at, Connecticut, and her mama didn't live in Delaware. Girl, we not in Delaware. Or who she knew who would want to rob the couple, or anybody who what I say? I came home and had to untie my wife from being hogtied. She pregnant with my baby, bitch. So now the detectives are more than no. But that's what he said. He said he didn't mean for it to happen. He wanted her to be found alive. Yada yada yada, lying ass nigga.